Okay, so we ended up with a question yesterday. I want to rehearse the question. I think it's quite a difficult question, and then I'll share with you what I think could be done to answer the question. There is a very well-known, widely used idea of why we have free will. Why did Kodesh Baruch Hu set up history that there's a former stage where we have free will, and we have challenges and make choices, and there's reward and punishment, and then a second stage in which, in the world will come, there's no free will at all. There's just reward. And the explanation that's given is, his purpose in creating the world was hatava, to do good, give good, create good, to benefit. That's a purpose for creating the world, because you can only do good and benefit something other than yourself. So there has to be something other than yourself. So you create something other than yourself. And now there are different qualities of gifts. And in particular, if you give someone something for nothing, then he feels he doesn't deserve it, didn't earn it, and therefore he's belittled by it. He's being treated as an incompetent. He has no dignity and self-respect. So although it's a good, and although he'll enjoy it, that enjoyment is tied together with a certain disappointment, certain blemish, certain demerit. So in order to avoid that demerit and to make the good perfect, Kodesh Baruch Hu arranged a way in which we could earn it and deserve it. We're put through a world with choices, and if we make good choices and make an effort to be good, do good, become good, then when we receive the reward in the world to come, it'll be something that we feel that we've earned and we deserve, and it won't be tied together with it the blemish of feeling of not worthy. And every time I have taught this for the last 40 years, someone asks, but then if that's the whole purpose of creating us this way, and the preliminary experiences with free will to avoid the feeling of embarrassment in the world to come, which is exactly the way the Yerushalmi puts it, you could solve the problem another way. Just create us without the feeling of embarrassment. Create us like horses. And then give us the good of the world to come, and it won't have that demerit. I think it's a good kasha. I think it's a good logical kasha. I didn't see people raise it, but it seems to be perfectly logical. And to that, I mentioned yesterday that Ramchal, who uses this argument of embarrassment in one of his books, the Natas Tunos, like everybody else, and Derech Hashem, in the second chapter, answers the same question in an entirely different way. No mention of embarrassment whatsoever. It's not relevant to his discussion. And he gives a completely satisfactory answer as to why we have free will. So first of all, I want to share that answer with you, so that you'll see that there's another way to explain it where the question doesn't arise. That is uncontroversial. I'm just telling you what he wrote. And then the question will be, since he wrote both explanations in two different places, how did he look at the relationship between the two explanations? Did he change his mind? Or are they not really not inconsistent? Or can they supplement one another? How can we understand that one author gave both explanations in two different places? This is what he says in the second chapter. Now, second chapter of the Way of God, the Derech Hashem, is very deep, very subtle. I could, without any doubt, recommend that everyone read it at least 5 times. I've read it at least 30 times. And I don't still get all the twists and turns, but this is enough of it to answer the question that we've raised. There are other things to say as well.
We actually read it with Reconciling last night.
With who?
Reconciling, because we're doing Derech Hashem.
Yeah.
We happened to just got into the second chapter.
Now, are you using Abba Tzvi Neyman's edition from Feldheim?
I'm not sure which one Reconciling.
Is it 700 pages? Is it a big fat volume?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's just blue.
His edition is the edition. It's the edition. First of all, he and I were chavrusas in the Mir 42 years ago. But aside from that, he He learned all of the Ramchal's Kabbalistic writings. He knows them well. And he was extremely thorough. When it first came out, I taught it 40 years ago. When it first came out, I saw that he asked many of the questions that I raised in the text. Sometimes he gave answers that I gave. Sometimes he gave other answers, which were very good. I think it is the edition. I don't know any edition that's comparable to it. So if you're going to learn the Derech Hashem, that's the one you should use. Anyway, this is what he says. Because Baruch Hu created the world in order to benefit, to do good. That's where everybody starts. Now he says, what is good? And what kind of good is the Kodesh Baruch Hu going to give? And how much good is he going to give? Well, Kodesh Baruch Hu is the supreme good. Kodesh Baruch Hu is perfection. Perfection by definition, there's nothing better than that. It is the best. So, Kodesh Baruch Hu is not going to be content with a halfway project. He's going to give as much good as can be given. Now, the careful listener will say, aha, you put in a condition, didn't you? As much as can be given? Maybe there are limits on how much can be given? So let's see. If I take it straightforward, simplistically, if he is the greatest good, and he's going to act to give the greatest good to a creature, call him Q, then what he ought to do is give to Q being God. That would be the greatest possible good, because he is the greatest possible good. So just give himself. Give to Q what he has. Give to Q being God. The trouble with that idea is that it's a self-contradiction, because one of the elements of God's perfection is that he is totally independent, totally self-contained, totally self-defined, totally self-determined, not dependent on anything else. Now, I can't give you being independent, because when I give it to you, you depend on me for giving it to you. So I can't give you being independent. That's contradiction in terms. And if you're not familiar with this, we don't tolerate contradiction in terms, even vis-a-vis God. Our tradition doesn't tolerate that. If that's puzzling to you, and you think it's a limitation, and it's imperfection, and so forth and so on, it's a story. We can talk about it. It's actually on my website. I have a discussion of it. But I'm not going to do that right at this moment. So, Ramchal says, and he says this, and then he says, since it's not possible, it's self-contradictory to say that he gives to a creature all of the perfection of the Creator, this is how we formulate it. God will give all of what he is that a creature can take. All of what he is that a creature can support. So he creates a creature which can then have all of what he is that a creature can have. That's how he does the greatest possible good. Well, that means the creature is going to be made in such a way that it can be godlike. Being godlike means having, so to speak, features that are similar to the features that God has, and that is the greatest good. Those features are the features of the greatest good. So now we should take a look at the kinds of features that God has, which a creature could also have or have something similar to. And the one which is crucial, because it's in and of itself, it's a very important feature, and also it's the basis of many other features, is the ability to be independent, self-determined. So let's think about that. God is independent absolutely. He is what he is of absolute necessity, in toto, nothing, he couldn't be anything else. So he's absolutely self-contained and independent. Now, just as we said 6.5 minutes ago, a creature can't be independent that way. A creature is created by God. Its whole existence is given by God. So, certainly isn't totally independent, absolutely independent. Would it be possible, even though the creature's whole existence is given by God, would it be possible to build into the creature some feature which would enable there to be a partial independence, a partial self-determinedness in its existence. What kind of feature would that be? You all know the answer to this question.
Free will.
How about free will? Free will is precisely the ability of the creature to make its own decisions, not caused by God. If those decisions are good decisions, then the creature not only does good, but as you know, psychologically, when you decide to do something and you do it, that has an effect on your character. If it becomes habitual, you become a different kind of person. If you struggle and you win the struggle, then you become stronger, you become better focused, your options become more elevated. So what Kadosh Baruch Hu says is, of course you're a creature, and I'm giving you your existence, but I'm also giving you a blank slate, and I'm giving you the ability to write a story on that blank slate. And that's your story. And in that respect, we resemble him. Of course, there's a difference in, how shall I say, in modality. He's necessarily self-creative, where accidentally a person could just not use his free will to create anything, not use his free will to do anything good or bad, just drift and be nothing. It doesn't have to happen, but it can happen. God's self-independence and self-determinedness is totality. All of him is that way. For us, it's only part. So for him, it's all. For us, it's part. For him, it's necessary. For us, it's contingent. But it is a kind of self-determinedness. And in that respect, we can be similar to him. And if we're similar to him, we have something that's precious because it's part of his perfection. That's step one. Now, step two, let's think about all the other features that we could have that would make us godlike, which would be valuable features, like being ourselves kind and generous, or pursuing justice and helping the downtrodden, the victims, or being courageous, or being creative, according to Rabbi Yonah, create worlds. Can a person have these virtues without free will? Can a person have any moral qualities without free will? In philosophy, everything is controversial, and certain subtle aspects of this are controversial, but the Jewish attitude is, without free will, there are no moral qualities at all. Let me give you a very simplistic example. I've programmed my computer, let's say, with a virtual agent to search, nowadays it's an AI agent, to search the internet for a certain type of information. And I have an email address list of 400 people. Every Thursday night, it sends out new information to all 400 people. Wake up Friday morning, there it is, Gottlieb's email with that new information. I imagine someone in Tucson, Arizona, and he wakes up Friday morning, I wonder what Gottlieb said. Bang, there it is, all the stuff. And suppose he says this, Gottlieb's computer. How generous it, look at that, that came from Gottlieb's computer. Gottlieb's computer is really, really very nice, very kind, very generous. I hope you feel that that's misapplied. Today with AI, you can never tell how crazy people have become. It's not the computer that's generous, it's I that am generous. I'm paying the electricity, I programmed the virtual agent, right, using up my software. So why not the machine? Because the machine didn't make any decisions. The machine's just a machine. So that being the case, it doesn't get any moral credit for the outcome. It's like someone does surgery and the patient whose life is saved praises the knife. Well, the knife was necessary. Without the knife, the surgery couldn't have been done. But it's a surgeon who wielded the knife, and he's the one, because he's the one who chose to do it, that deserves the credit. So free will is not only a feature which makes the person similar to a Kadosh Baruch Hu in and of its own right, because it gives him self-determination, to be similar to a Kadosh Baruch Hu self-determination. That's true, but in addition to that, free will is the foundation of all the other features in which we want to be able to resemble a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and in that way have the great good that he is. So So that's why Kodesh Baruch Hu creates us with free will, so that we'll be able to have the maximum good that a creature can have. We together so far? Yeah, because there's another feature that I want to go into, but let's make sure we got this.
It
Yeah.
kind of seems like stage 2 to me is the point, the fact that we can't represent any of the goodness that makes us godlike without it being free will. That seems to be the main point of free will. I'm not really understanding how in stage 1 free will itself is something that makes us God. It seems almost like superficial, like it could have been any quality. Like, why is this free will thing? Especially because it's only partial, and if it is partial, you could have accomplished that partiality through some other means. Like, it's like
Okay, I hear your intuition. And I want to say two things. First of all, if someone told me, someone says that God is perfect, and then you found out that he depended upon something else for part of his ability to operate, I think we would regard that as an imperfection. Dependence is an imperfection. And now, perfection, by definition, is the greatest possible good. So if dependence is an imperfection, it means you're less good when you're dependent. But now, our possessing some independence means we possess something that's good. It doesn't feel good like generosity to other people feels good. But in terms of the ideal of what a creature can be, you'd be lacking in that ideal if you had no independence. The most magnificent mouse that you can imagine just doesn't measure up.
is free will, when used for the greatest good, is that independent or dependent on the greatest good? Like at some
Well, it's not
point, doesn't
causally.
the momentum kind of just like
It's not causally dependent. That's why it's free. By the word free, and free will means free from external causation. That's what it means. So, of course, the free will makes a choice, and it could have chosen otherwise. And it chooses to dedicate itself to the greatest good. Then it becomes the source of great perfection for the creature that has it. Just 1 second.
okay.
Okay? Now, I just let me get a hint at something else here. It's that free will enables self-determinedness. Not free will, it's free will determined, I said this before, that enables self-determinedness. Right? Someone will ask, well, God doesn't have free will, so why isn't that a loss? Why isn't that an imperfection? Because it's not the free will that's the perfection. It's the being self-determined that's the perfection. In a human being, since we're almost completely smothered in divine causation, because he gives us our entire existence, you have to ask, in an engineering sense, where am I going to stick in the self-determinedness? How am I going to program it in? Because it's surrounded by divine causation. Free will is the answer to an engineering problem. How are you going to enable this divinely caused creature to be self-determined in any respect whatsoever? But the goal is to be self-determined like he's self-determined. Now, there's a second stage, which I'm coming to now, which the Ramchal talks about in that chapter, and that I think it elaborates on the self-determinedness in a very dramatic way. The goal of all life, he says, in spiritual terms, is dveikus. And in addition to being the name of a fine Jewish music band, dveikus means to be connected to. Well, if you have a nail, you can bang it into a wall. If you have a piece of paper, you can glue it to the wall. That's connected, but that's connection of two physical objects. What would connectedness mean for things that aren't physical? And in particular, what would connectedness mean for the creator and the creature? And the answer to that question is a kind of relationship, a kind of interaction. And there are different grades of connectedness, different grades of interaction. I want to give you this in an analogy, a parable, where you can see there's the parable of what is the real Jewish understanding of it, so you'll get an idea of what we're talking about. Let's imagine the CEO of a very large and complex company with offices all over the world and manufacturing plants and so forth and so on. And think of a worker in one of his manufacturing bases who operates a machine. He's working for the CEO. Well, he's working to accomplish what the CEO wants accomplished. And the CEO pays him a salary for that. So they're definitely related. Not like somebody who works for somebody else or does something else entirely. They're related. They're, in a certain sense, partners. They're both working for the good of the company, that the company should be successful. Still, the gap between their responsibility for the company as a whole, the gap between them in terms of the overall project and the decisions of how it should be run, is a gigantic gap. So, although it's a relationship, it's not as much of a relationship, let's say, as, I'm jumping a lot of layers, let's take a trusted vice president. So the CEO says, go to Albania and negotiate with the government and open up a new plant in Albania. That's a very responsible job. It requires a lot of knowledge and expertise and technique. Opening up a whole plant, it's got to find a site for the plant, see where there are workers who are capable to do the work in the plant, get the appropriate laws passed by the legislature to make sure that what he's doing is legal. It's a gigantic responsibility. The interactions between the CEO and this vice president are going to be much higher level interactions. They share a project, and the vice president is carrying out a wing of the project. He has a much, much better idea of the overall project, not as good as the CEO, but much better than the guy who's working in the factory. And he's dedicated to it, and there'll be a much greater amount of sharing between the CEO and the vice president than will be on a lower level. That's a much greater level of connection and dveikus. Now, let's imagine that the company has two CEOs. It's run by a pair, not by one. And decisions are taken in concert. And decisions are only made when both of them agree. And they discuss everything between them. The bonding there is going to be exquisite. They both have a vision of the entire project. They both have a commitment to the entire project. They both have responsibility for the entire project. So the bonding there is going to be a much richer bonding. So now let's imagine a human being relating to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So first of all, how about squirrels? How are they related to Kodesh Baruch Hu? Well, he creates them, and he gives them their nature, and everything they do is programmed by him, but he uses them. He built the world with squirrels, and the squirrels have a function. They carry it out. Are they connected? Sure. They're connected like the scalpel in the hands of the surgeon. Can't do surgery without a scalpel. I wouldn't say can't with respect to Kodesh Baruch Hu, but I would say this is the way he's chosen to run his world, using mice, and therefore the mice are playing a role that he wants them to play. But there's no partnership there. There's no partnership there. It's just a tool. Now let's go up a stage. Let's take, for example, like the fellow who's working in the factory. So Kodesh Baruch Hu gives us instructions, things that need to be done. And we have free will, and we decide to follow those instructions. Then we become partners in the sense that through our free-willed, responsible decisions, we move God's project ahead. We help make the world operate in such a way that it fulfills his will, and it becomes more and more fulfilled and perfected. That's a much higher level. It's closer to the level of the vice president. I was working this out a few hours ago to communicate it to you, and then I thought, okay, but how about the top level? Top level of two CEOs. Do we get to that kind of top-level relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu? And then I remembered something which the Ramchal says elsewhere, which I will now tell you. And I think, because the same author, I think that we can work it out in direct terms. I never put these two things together before, but that's if you teach, so you get a lot of help from the Kodesh Baruch Hu. The Ramchal says there's an essay called Mamar Likorim, the essay on the fundamentals, which is a short, much shortened version of the basic ideas of the Derech Hashem, which is printed in the back of some editions of the Derech Hashem. And at the end of that essay, he says the following: what is the status of rabbinical mitzvos? So there's some discussion about this in the medieval commentaries. Most take the following position. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave authority to the rabbis to make laws. So when the rabbis make a law, that law is an expression of the divine will. Someone who doesn't follow a rabbinic law is violating God's will. Qualitatively, it's just the same as eating pigs. Because Baruch Hu said you have to do this, because Baruch Hu said you have to do that. The second thing he said indirectly, you have to do what they say, and they said this, but in the end, that's what you have to do. So the Ramchal asked the following question. If that's true, that the laws that the rabbis make have divine force, why didn't the Kodesh Baruch Hu give them? I don't know anybody else who asked this question, but he asks it there. Why didn't God give them? And if you tell me, well, look, a lot of these laws came into existence later because of new conditions, changed conditions that needed them. Protection against certain types of bad habits which arose only later, or to celebrate holidays that took place later. Kodesh Baruch Hu could either have given them with the trigger conditions. If kashrus becomes difficult, then institute this and this and this. If there are problems with Shabbos, institute that, that, and that. Or he could have had a means of continuously giving input into the world so that he could give us these new laws. It isn't beyond the possibility that he should make these laws. So why didn't he do it, since the laws are going to have divine force anyway? Ramchal says something there, when I first read it, I almost fell off my chair. He said, I want the Jewish people to have a hand in creating Torah. I want the Jewish people to be able to create Torah. Wow. I think of myself as charged with the wonderful responsibility of fulfilling the Torah. And that's definitely a lifetime task. That definitely can absorb all your energy and all your creativity. Creating Torah? It's like almost inconceivable. But the bottom line is, I'm going to elaborate on this in a second, but the bottom line is, if we're creating Torah, we're creating part of the goal. We're creating part of the project. This is what hit me today. And we're creating part of the project that we really are playing a role similar to the role of the creator who created the project. Okay, there's more and less, and it's within the rubric that he set up, but still, he invited us to be co-creators of the project. That's an exquisite relationship. And that is one way of understanding the dveikus, the connection that a human being can have, and the purpose for creation is to have that kind of relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is encapsulated in what I said yesterday in the name of my oldest son, who taught it to me. When the Yerushalmi says about being embarrassed, he who eats that which is not his own is embarrassed to look the giver in the face. So my son said, okay, it's embarrassment, we know that, you didn't earn it, so you don't really deserve it, and so on and so on. Why does the Yerushalmi mention looking him in the face? Because in Kabbalistic writings, there are different types of relationships, and the highest relationship is a face-to-face relationship. The Yerushalmi is hinting he can't look the giver in the face. You can only look him in the face if you're something of an equal. If you're just a total dependent, you can't look him in the face. So it's hinting at this other idea. So now, let's go back and understand what this idea that human beings can create Torah. So I thought about this. Let's think of categories of Kedusha, of holiness, and ask, do we have any access to them? Do we have any control over them? Let's take things that are holy. Of course, a Sefer Torah is holy. A mezuzah is holy. Tefillin are holy. We make them. We actually manufacture them and create them. The land of Israel is holy. Do we have any control over that? We can add to the land of Israel. And when we add to it, it becomes holy. The same with the place of the temple. We can add to it, and we create that holiness. We create sacrifices. We take a bottle of oil and we say, this is holy, and it's holy, because we said so. We made it holy. We take this animal and say, this animal is going to be a korban olah, becomes a sacrifice, and it becomes holy because we said so. How about soul? Well, we can convert people to Torah. We make more Jews. We make Jews. We create the status of Jewish holiness in people by accepting them as Jews. It seems like we do have considerable access to the categories of holiness that we can add to them. So I thought to myself, well, maybe not so far off that we can create Torah. And then I thought of, what the clincher is. Can we create mitzvos? Yes, we can. You could take a vow or an oath and thereby create for yourself a mitzvah deraisa. You can say, granny apples are usher to me like pigs, and it's just as bad as eating pigs. You could say, I take a vow to be the first one in the base medrash in the morning, and you have to be the first one in the base medrash. You can make mitzvahs for yourself. The Torah gives us a category whereby what we say creates new mitzvahs for us. That's pretty closely creating Torah, isn't it? It's creating mitzvahs that the Torah is now, I'm going to be obligated to do. So Ramchal is saying, it goes a step further. When the rabbis make laws, they're creating more Torah. If they're creating Torah, it's gigantic. The Torah is the wisdom and the will of the Creator. And when the rabbis enact it, it becomes the wisdom and the will of the Creator. He's doing it through them. That's a relationship of quasi-equality, and therefore we could look him in the face, and therefore we are bound to him. The devek, the glue that binds us together, is very exquisite glue. Let's put it this way, it doesn't make absolute equality, but to use the phraseology we used a half hour ago, it's the highest equality that a creature could have. A creature couldn't have more than that. And of course, Baruch Hu created us, so we should have as much as a creature could have. So this is a full explanation of where free will goes and why it's necessary. And in the last 35 minutes, I haven't mentioned embarrassment once. I haven't used it in this description at all. So this is a completely independent description of why we have free will. Are we together, more or less? Okay, so the final thing that has to be addressed, I think, is what's the relationship between the two explanations? Since the Ramchal expresses both of them in two different books, albeit, but still he does. So this is my speculation now. What the relationship is. I think that the idea of embarrassment, of not earning it, is an emotional expression or symptom of the failure of becoming like a Kadosh Baruch Hu and being able to connect to him. The Ramchal talks about in chapter 2 of the Derech Hashem. The chapter of the Derech Hashem is the ultimate reality. It's the inner reality. And the embarrassment that the other explanation talks about is an emotional symptom of that failure of achieving the inner reality. Embarrassment, these concepts are very rich, they have a lot of nuances. One of the things that causes embarrassment is where a person is seen in a light which undermines his self-importance or his dignity. And actually, it could happen whether it's true or false. Because if other people think of him that way, it will cause him embarrassment because he's seen in a way which degrades him. Degrades is determined by what values you have, what you think is important, and it varies from person to person. For some people, if you tell them that you're weak and clumsy, tell the same person you're stupid, and he'll kill you. Stupidity is a much worse insult than being weak and clumsy. So it depends upon the gradations of the person. But the embarrassment is being portrayed in a way that's inconsistent with what you think is important about yourself. Okay, given the Ramchal's explanation of Derech Hashem, the soul is created in such a way that it can stand face to face with the Creator. If something happens which is inconsistent with that, it degrades it. If it's aware that it's been put in a situation where it can't do that, so then it feels, I'm not fulfilling my value. I'm not living up to what I can live up to. And I'm degraded by the fact that I'm not achieving what is the most important thing for me to achieve. The embarrassment comes from the contradiction to the self-creativity of this human being, which enables him to realize that similarity to the Creator, which makes him a partner with the Kodesh Baruch Hu in the management of the world. So the embarrassment is a symptom of the fact that he's being undone in that way. It's a little bit like this. I was talking about this with my Chavusa this morning. As I'm learning Netanya, talk about how much a mitzvah is worth. How much is a mitzvah worth? How much you should be willing to give up for the sake of a mitzvah? Now, my Rebbe Zatzal, the Boston Rebbe, put it, I think, in a very poignant way. Think of someone offering you money for your mitzvah. Wants to buy your mitzvah. Imagine first, my Rebbe said, it's a mitzvah already done. You just have a mincha. You don't have a mincha. Somebody comes up and says, $1,000 for that mincha. I'll pay you $1,000, have that mitzvah transferred to my mitzvah account. I don't know about you, but once I've done a mitzvah, I did it. You know, I did that mitzvah. $1,000, $1 million, $1 billion. I'm not giving up my mitzvah. You know, it's part of who I am. It's part of what I am. It's just not worth it. Nothing physical could be worth it. Okay, now the Rebbe said like this. Suppose the temptation beforehand to give up mincha because I could close the deal and I could make that profit. So the Rebbe said, if you could only import that feeling from after the mitzvah, well, you would never give it up, import it to before the mitzvah. When I finish this mitzvah, I'm going to be in a position where I would never give it up. So it's worth getting there, because then I'll have something that's so precious that I would never give it up. So why should I give it up now? That's not easy and doesn't always work, but it's true. It's true that after I do the mitzvah, nothing would give it up. So it's that sense of the opportunity to be self-creative that the soul identifies as its highest possible development, and therefore, if anything were to downgrade that, it would be devastating to the soul, and that's experienced as embarrassment. So now, what are we imagining? We're imagining the soul receiving a reward without earning it. That's zero. That's zero. There's no self-creativity there at all. It's being given without any free will. That's horrible. That sense of, but that's not me. That's the embarrassment that's being talked about in the other explanation, which is so widespread. It's that embarrassment of, that's not me. If I got it for nothing, it wouldn't be me. It would be devastating to me. It wouldn't be just a blemish in the good. It would be devastating to me. You know, it's sort of like, maybe I can give you another type of analogy. Let's say you're a runner, and you compete in races, and you're good, and you win races. And you're in a race, and you're doing your best, and there's another guy there, and he's good. And he's a little bit ahead of you, and you're putting on all the steam. And about 50 yards from the finish line, he slows down, and you manage to pass him, and you win. You feel terrific. He was good, and you beat him. And then later, a friend of you says, listen, we took care of him. We took care of him. We had a time-released drug in his system. We made sure that at the end he'd be weak, so he could win. Well, did I win? I got there first. But I didn't win. I didn't win. They crippled him. So do I feel good about the victory? I got the trophy. I'm getting the scholarship. But it's a lie. Why do I feel bad about the lie? Because it's not me. I didn't do it. That's crushing. Because I want to feel that I did it. The soul feels that way about Olam Haba. If I didn't earn it, then there's no I in it. I'm essentially just a squirrel. And then I can't look a Kodesh Baruch Hu in the face. And I can't have vakus with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Yeah.
I've noticed, I don't know, is this, you can tell me if it's the same type of embarrassment, but like, if I had a really light week of work, then by Shabbat, sometimes I don't always feel as like great on Shabbat? Because I'm like, I feel like I didn't really do much during the week. Why did I earn this rest? Like,
That's a very interesting observation. Let me think about that for a second.
like I know I should observe the Shabbat and rest, but it's almost like Hashem has like been like you have to take this reward no matter what. So you better work a little harder than it. Because like I've noticed, like if I have like a really lazy Thursday too, maybe or something, like I don't know. I just don't feel as good about taking this rest, even though I know it's commanded of me no matter what I did during the week to do that.
Okay, I think it's a subtle question. I'll make just one remark now, but maybe I'll think about it now. I'll have more to say maybe tomorrow. The relationship between the week and Shabbos really ought to be that the 6 days you spend preparing for Shabbos. Now, if you're working and you need money, so then you're doing what needs to be done. But that money is going to be spent on Shabbos and holidays and books to learn and so forth and so on. That's the goal of all of it. So it's not supposed to, in other words, let me put it this way. What's the goal? Is it that the 6 days are used to prepare for Shabbos, or Shabbos is used to prepare for the coming week? So if you think, well, I worked for 6 days, I'm exhausted, good thing I have a day off, because then next week I'll be fresh and strong, then you're using Shabbos to prepare for the next week. That's not exactly the whole idea. Maybe it's part of it, but it's not the whole idea. The whole idea is that the whole day, and that's why every day is counted. We don't have names for the days, you know that, right? Today's 1 day in Shabbos, 2 days in Shabbos. Every day is looking forward to Shabbos. So whether my secular profession requires more of me or less, I have more time to learn. If I have more time to learn, then by doing that on Thursday, that's how I'm preparing for Shabbos also. So it shouldn't detract from the preciousness of Shabbos. That your work day was lighter, that it shouldn't have that effect. Yeah.
Yeah, but sorry, when someone's fasting the day Sahara, do they get reward for, even if they do fail, do they get reward for resisting for a certain amount of time?
Absolutely.
From the fast?
Absolutely. No question about it. No question about it. The effort, in fact, the Ramchal says, in the Derech Hashem, the whole of your reward depends upon the amount of your effort. He says it 3 times. And it's like we say, for example, in learning Torah, if you spend a lot of time learning and don't get the right understanding of the text, and you may know that you didn't get it, it just didn't come across, you get all the same credit. Because getting the right understanding is a gift. Now, Kadosh Baruch Hu wants you to struggle. And sometimes he puts you in a situation where he wants you to struggle several times until you have the overcome the obstacle. So you definitely get credit for struggling. Absolutely. Yeah.
Rabbi, can we say that, okay, what is free will in the context of a person who was born a tzaddik, right? Do they have somehow less free will because they have a lessened proclivity to doing an avera?
No one is born a tzaddik. The Gemara in Nida says it explicitly. You're born and decreed to be tall or short and strong or weak and healthy or ill, but you're not born a tzaddik. There's no such thing. You're only a tzaddik if you make yourself a tzaddik. It's a contradiction in terms. Tzaddik is the name for a free will and accomplishment. Just like being generous is something that requires in your free will decision, so being a tzaddik requires a free will decision. Without that, you're not a tzaddik. Okay, one more question, then I have to go. Yeah.
Would Rebbe agree that humility, which we say is the source of all positive moral characteristics, and pride, which is the source of all negative, are fundamentally dependent on free will?
All of them are dependent upon free will. Some people have inborn tendencies in one direction or the other, but there will always be circumstances which will put them to the test. And therefore, to avoid degrading them or to build them even beyond what you've been given, that will always be dependent upon free will. So there's no way to avoid free will in these matters.
Embarrassment is likely dependent on humility and pride, on those two, on that dichotomy.
It's a tricky question. It's a tricky question. Let's talk about it tomorrow.